Cambodia is one issue. There's a lot more when it comes to ASEAN. Of course, there's the question of Myanmar. Aung San Suu Kyi is going to be here in criticism of her role in not doing more to stop the persecution of the Myanmar Rohingya. The Philippines, its ongoing war on drugs is another issue. And of course, China and the South China Sea. Exactly what will ASEAN say and do? Huong Le Thu is a senior analyst at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute and she joins me now. Lovely to have you with us. I know there are differing views on ASEAN. At one extreme, there are those who say it's a toothless tiger, it is past its use-by date, and others that say that it is an organisation that either can be changed or reformed, but still speaks broadly to the region. Where do you sit?
Well, the question is really what do we expect from ASEAN, and there are different people standing in different corners looking at ASEAN very different way. With me personally, I think ASEAN is experiencing some sort of middle-age crisis. It has had a period of time where ASEAN founding fathers had vision of a stable region and could communicate that vision, could communicate those values to their neighbors and fellow ASEAN members who could share the similar concerns and similar vision. But at the moment, personally, I see that this vision is not really well communicated to the next generation of current leaders, as you pointed out.
There's a line that I've read that says, ASEAN is a cow and we keep criticising it for not being a horse.
Yes.
Are we expecting it to be something that it simply is not?
Yeah, so when we talk about there are so many issues of human rights and territorial dispute and you name it, but ASEAN was not established to solve all the issues. ASEAN was established to be a platform for communication for the neighboring countries to voice their concern, but also voice this similar interest, which is the stable region. So ASEAN serves its purpose in a way that it is kind of soft diplomacy and often things that are voiced not directly in the multilateral forum, but often as a backdoor communication and diplomacy, and that is still valid.
Dr. Le Thu, this is an organisation that was formed 50 years ago, an entirely different world. We hadn't seen the rise of China. It was the Cold War. Economic development and democracy had not come to many of these countries. But you are dealing with an entirely different world now. It's this question of being fit for purpose, and even the question of whether a multilateral organisation like this works in this region as we find it today.
Well, in a way, it's very, very different region, but at the same time, certain issues remain the same. For example, at that time, in the backdrop of Cold War is also great power rivalry and issues with, animosities between and among neighbors. It's still there. So in a way, it is very different contexts, but certain issues remain similar. And I agree, it needs a revival in terms of its vision and values and purposes to serve. And right now, I think there's a lack of that leadership, and that's why we see, and that's why we call it toothless tiger.
Is it just going to get harder, though? The reality now is that China is a dominant player in the region. It's on track to get bigger. It has influence in countries like the Philippines, like Cambodia. It's spreading its economic influence and, of course, laying claim to the South China Sea in this territorial disputes that involve several of these countries. The spectre of China, the continued rise of China and its influence, does it thwart any potential for this organisation to achieve what it possibly could, given that great power influence it's going to exert?
Yeah, the last couple of years didn't look very optimistic, but I think it evolves. And also the role of chairmanship is quite an important role. This year's Singapore turn, who is very committed to kind of reinforce these common values and common security interests, and moreover communicate the region's long-term interests, because short-term, as you point out, China's offers and multiple initiatives relationship can become more attractive in the short term, but in the long term, if the region doesn't stick together, it doesn't stick to its own interest, it could be quite dangerous.
Can I just get you to finish on a thought about Australia's role in this? Because Australia hosting ASEAN here in this weekend, and a country like Australia, a middle power, close strategic relationship with the United States, biggest trading relationship with China. Where does that position Australia to maybe able to shape some of this outcome?
So, like I said in the beginning, ASEAN is experiencing some sort of middle life crisis, and it needs some confidence. So, when it is in last years, there's this kind of breakdown in self-confidence in the ability of this regional multilateral institution, while Australia as a neighbor as well and as a relevant player in the global arena, not only in the region, has this confidence in ASEAN or wants to have that confidence. It helps ASEAN to look inside and see, look, we have a value as well. We're in the middle of this forming Indo-Pacific concept, and it is important that ASEAN still stay relevant. And for short-term interest, yes, individual countries might seek short-term interest, but in terms of regional relevance, I think they do realize that ASEAN is a playing key role in that relevance.
And of course, we'll await the communique. The big criticism is that it's so pragmatic that we end up with consensus by compromise and not exactly tackling the hard issues that it needs to. We'll wait and we'll see what the outcome is. Dr. Le Thu, terrific to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.